All right, what's up, Bulldogs? Today I have a very special guest. I have with me Joe Foster, who's actually the founder of Reeboks. I thought this was a great opportunity. I read his book recently, Shoemaker, and really loved it. Really loved the story, and wanted to get Joe on here to talk about it. I think it's really interesting. A lot of you guys are entrepreneurs. You want to become entrepreneurs, but sometimes I find that the most useful information you can find as an entrepreneur is actually biographies, stories of successful entrepreneurs and how they built their businesses. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you, John. Very
Yeah,
nice.
so,
Thank you for the invitation.
yeah. No, I'm glad to have you. It's an honor to have you here. So I've read your book, Shoemaker.
Thanks.
Really excellent. I just thought, as I was reading through it, I was like, this should be a movie. It lends itself quite well to a movie. I don't know if you're working on the movie rights, but I would
Maybe one of these days. It has been suggested, but I think with some time I felt yet.
Yeah. But yeah, it's an amazing story, and I don't know how you recall all the details of that. You've got so many details in there over so much time. Did you journal, or did you have to try to piece this all together? How did that work?
Well, it took me a long time to get down to writing the story. I think I started about 7 years ago, but and it's only when you start writing, you're sitting down and you take it along a certain path, and you get to a certain point, you think, just a minute, I was also doing that, so the story itself sort of brings the memory back. And it's quite amazing just how much you do recall and how much you can actually put into a book, because there's so much more, I think, to a life. But so I had quite a bit of help in doing that. So just to pick out and make sure that the story kept going in the proper way, rather, I had it going all over the place. But so the story at the end, it runs nicely. And it is surprising how the memory sort of brings things back again.
Yeah. Now with Reeboks and building up Reeboks, one of the biggest questions I had from the book was what you thought. And I know the last chapter you kind of cover some of the instrumental people in forming it and being successful. But what do you think was the biggest thing? I guess maybe looking at from the lens of advice you could give other people, what was the biggest thing that led to the success that you had? Because it was incredible amount of success in a very short period of time. Well, relatively short period of time, I suppose, when things really took off. But
yeah, I think you got to you got to have that sort of game where you can stay with it. You've got to keep going with whatever you're doing. Who knows when it will turn out right? You've read the book, and I come from a fairly long line of shoemakers. Yeah. My grandfather, he made his first pair of spike track shoes back down in 1895. So we go through a long period, and you say, well, where do you get that difference? I think it's because once you're involved and you're immersed in what you're trying to do, and we were trying to expand our athletics offerings, and the UK is only so big. It's not a big market. Certainly track and field, which in those days was track and field in the United Kingdom, not big, but we had a very focused audience, and I could get to that audience. I could get there. But it was then I say, well, where do we go now? As a sports brand, you might say, well, you go into field games, things like American football, or as far as we were concerned in the UK, it's soccer. And soccer probably globally is the biggest single sport. And but Adidas at that time, we left the family business because the family business had just stayed in the 1930s, of all things. And my father and uncle who were running it at that time, they just couldn't listen to, we need to move. So we moved. Jeff and myself, we moved. We got out of the company, set up our own company. And yes, we grew ourselves nicely in track and field. But really, the big market for track and field is the USA. We knew. I mean, whilst we were at Foster's, they had an agreement with Yale University, actually with the coaches there, Bob G and Jack and Frank Ryan. So they were sending about 200 pairs of shoes a month. Nice, 200 pairs of shoes, fine, but that's not a big company.
Right.
you should be selling 2 million pairs of shoes. So you need to get something bigger. So I was aware of Frank Ryan, and Foster's were just going down, down. So I contacted Frank Ryan, and we talked about a few things. But by that time, I think Frank himself was a bit too old to sort of move over and start looking at the new brands. So it was not until 1968, and I got the opportunity to go to America. The Board of Trade, the British government, you will, decided they'd like to help us export, and they'd like to see if we could export to America. Okay, USA, fine. And they were willing to provide us with a stand at the NSGA show. I don't think the NSGA show goes anymore. It was the National Sporting Goods show, and it was in Chicago in February. Chicago in February is very cold.
Yeah.
I found out. Yeah. But that was in 1968. So I went with a friend. We took the trip because the government, they paid our airfare as well, return, and they would also pay half of the hotel bills. So it really would cost us nothing except to turn up with our product, which we did. And very nice. Everybody loved the shoes. And when they said, well, where do we buy them from? And I said, England.
Yeah.
And they look at me and say, England, yeah. And they say, is that New England? No. Across the water, across that pond there. Well, look, when you get somebody over here and you've got some stock over here, we'd love to try your shoes. That was that. Right. It was 1979. Gone from 1960, 1979, before I got the distributor. But it's how we got the distributor. But it's how do you get into such a market as the USA? I mean, it's a vast market, absolutely. You know, and the size of it is incredible. You can't really think how do you cover all that to get people interested. Well, it so happened towards the end of the 60s, running became a category. Everybody started to run. Well, not everybody at that time, but Bob Anderson brought out his Runner's World magazine. It was actually a single paper at that time. By the mid-70s, it had turned into a magazine, full gloss, full color, and everybody was reading it. And millions of Americans were out there with the shoes running. And this, of course, this almost spawned Nike. Nike came out. This was absolutely perfect for them. So where timing is concerned, Nike were there just at the right time when the whole thing was expanding. So, okay, you know, did Nike help Runner's World? Or did Runner's World help Nike? I think there was a bit of both. But there were other people around. There were New Balance, Etonic. I used to be able to name them all. But there are a lot of shoes out there. And we advertised in the magazine. In fact, during the 70s, because I kept coming back to the NSGA show every year, I was back at the NSGA show. And meeting lots of people. But it was about mid-80s when Runner's World became so big and such an influence that they decided they could tell everybody which were the best shoes.
Right.
So they rated them number one, number two. And I think the first number one shoe was a Nike. I don't know whether it was Tailwinds, one of those shoes anyway. Well, the biggest problem is that Nike were importing from Japan. And all of a sudden, there's 1 million people want that shoe.
Oh, yeah.
Does not work. 6-8 months later, in order to get that wound up and into the scale that they needed, you were 6 or 8 months. The retail trade, they were going mad. They couldn't get the shoe. And then when they did get the shoe, within 2 or 3 months, there's going to be another number one.
Yeah.
You can imagine the chaos that created. So that happened for a couple of years. And then Bob Anderson either was persuaded or had the idea, instead of rating it number one, number two, number three, we'll do a star rating. So the best shoes will give them 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, and so on. That was, for me, that was the incentive. Look, we would probably never get a number one if we could try for a long time, but we could get a 5-star shoe. And if we get a 5-star shoe, instead of 1 million people wanting it, maybe 250,000 people would want it. Great, let's try and see if we can get a 5-star shoe. That's when we designed Aztec. Aztec was our shoe we knew what Bob Anderson wanted. We knew how they were testing the shoes, what they were looking for, the cushioning, the toe off, the lightness of the product. And so it was 1978. We had the shoe designed. We tested that out in Edmonton, where we had the Commonwealth Games. It was a success. But we call it was part of the gold range, because this was called Aztec, and we had a racing shoe called Midas, and we had a track spike called Inca.
Okay. Yeah.
So they were all doing very well at Edmonton. By February of 1979, I'm the NSGA show, Chicago, with the gold range. And, well, Kmart. Running was so big in those days. Kmart came along and said, we'd love to buy 25,000 pairs. Well, we only have a small factory in England. And the small factory, that would be about 6 months' work.
Oh wow. Yeah.
But we didn't go into the idea that if we got a 5-star shoe, we'd just sit and think about it. No, we knew that if we got a 5-star shoe, we would need more production. So I had a good friend who in fact was just developing sports footwear for Bata. Bata are probably the biggest shoe company in the world if you really look at them. And so he would do me production. Fine, that's great. But then again, Kmart said, but we need a better price. Now, Bata could do them at a better price than I could do them back in our factory, but not that much better. And we knew that everything was now going to the Far East. So I'd made arrangements to meet with people who had factories in South Korea. So yes, we could cope with that. But also at that show, Paul Fireman, he came in. And Paul Fireman, he ran a small wholesale business in the outdoors business. It was called Boston Camping. And Boston Camping, they did tents, they did everything, ground sheets, they did fishing rods. And he was running this company with his brother and his brother Steve and his brother-in-law. And I think Paul was just a bit tired of just going around the same, backwards and forwards each year on year, just selling outdoor equipment. And Paul said, look, I'd love to be your distributor. Well, yes, come on, great. He said, but what you need, Joe, is a 5-star shoe. I said, we know that. Like, come this way. Come this way. This is going to be a 5-star shoe. Really? Look, we've done our own. If we don't get a 5-star shoe with this, we'll never do it. This is going to be 5-star. And this, we're talking now February in 1979, and the shoe issue comes out in August. So we're a few months to wait. And I go backwards and forwards. I talk with Kmart. Problem with Kmart is that they're just selling space. They just, space has to make money. And if your product goes in there and it doesn't make the sufficient profits, no, I thought, no, that's not going to be a distributor. That's just going to be somebody give me a big order and maybe only one off. It may be more, but it's not going to build a brand. And I knew that if I was going to go anywhere, it was with somebody like Paul. So I'd talked with Paul, and I'd been visiting at least once to the Boston Camping and having a look around at operation. However, I think it's the last week in July when usually the August edition of Runner's World came out, and I got Paul on the telephone. I think it was a bit too early in the morning for him, possibly like you right now, early in the morning. But I said, Paul, just go down to the local kiosk and pick up a Runner's World, and let's see where we are now. We should have our 5-star ratings. An hour later, Paul came back on the phone. Joe, Aztec, 5 stars.
Yeah.
Well, that was it. It was like, oh, we've made it. We cracked it. That was the hope. He said, yeah, but also Midas as a racing shoe and Inca as a track spike, they also got 5 stars. So we got 3 5-star shoes. That was our break. That's how we got into America.
Yeah, that's amazing how that one thing can be such the pivotal movement. I know in the book you talked about so much trying to get into, to get the American distribution. and how you had the one guy, was it Shoe, that the 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 guy that you initially had as a distributor, but wasn't working out. He didn't have the resources.
Shulang, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Yeah. Well, I had at least 6 attempts, and Shu was probably the one that we tried hardest and longest. Yeah. And the correspondence that would go backwards and forwards. And, yeah, I don't know. Somehow it seemed that our Shu just didn't travel. We never had any problems. We never had problems in the UK.
Yeah.
But we always seemed to have problems with Shu. I don't know what it was. And yeah, it was, but you kept trying. That was it. And it was only till I knew we had to get the 5 stars. And it didn't work with Shu. And he was the last one it didn't work with. And so I sort of parted ways with him before we met up with Paul Fireman. Yeah. And there was still that problem, though. It's like, okay, we now have a really good reason to be on that market. We now have a 5-star shoe. But what you want is, you need what's behind it. You need that infrastructure, the wholesale infrastructure. So the next time I go to America, Paul's, yep, I'm in with you. Next time I went there, Boston Camping no longer existed.
Yeah.
My thought was, well, they'll just bolt this on. So we have a nice business. The business is going all right. Bolt this onto it, and we can probably build a brand. Boston Camping no longer existed. It was Paul on his own, but he was hungry. He was really hungry. He got wrinkles in his belly. He needed this, and I think when I reflect back, well, instead of having anything to sort of take his mind off it and still be concentrated a bit on his camping, now he was totally focused.
Yeah,
he had to make it work. He'd almost pulled the rug from underneath himself. Now he had to make it work, and we had lots of problems to begin with. And it's in the book how many problems we had. We had problems with the production that we got from barter, and then you've got to finance it. Paul had got his money, but okay, with barter, he managed to get a credit line with barter, even though at the end we didn't pay. But going to the Far East, going to South Korea, no credit lines. You have to put up a letter of credit. You have to have money in your bank, or you have to have a bank who's willing to back you, and they will pay for the product. And it really only becomes a problem when you start growing. And we were starting, the shoes were going really well, fantastic. But he still needed some financing. And this happened through a guy in England. It was Pentland was the company, and Stephen Rubin. Stephen Rubin, he operated as a sourcing company. His company was called ASCO, and they actually sourced product for big companies in the UK, and he was trying to get into America as well. So he said to Paul, look, I'll just give you a credit line. That's all Paul needed. And he expected Paul to go Sears and all these other big companies and do some own brand work. We'll make your own brands and bring them in from Korea. Paul didn't want to know that. No, got to be Reebok, which he did. And I think Stephen got a bit worried when about $20 million of debt, all his shoes coming in.
Yeah.
But the business was working. The business was great. But the real thing that happened to Reebok, we were growing nicely. It was a nice running company, excellent. But then there's this guy down in LA, Arnold Martinez. And Arnold Martinez was a tech rep. He was a runner. So he knew the shoes, and he was going in technical advising, this about the shoe. Brilliant. And his wife came home and with her girlfriends, and she's full of this new thing. And Arnold says, what's that? And she said, it's aerobics. What's aerobics? Well, it's exercise to music. But she was so full of it. He said, look, I'm going to come. Next time you go, can I come with you? Yeah, come on, come down. So he did. He went down next time. And there's the instructor. She's doing the exercises with a pair of running shoes. And half the class, they were also in running shoes. The other half, no shoes. To Arnold, that was a big invitation, like a light bulb moment. Oh, something went on. Why don't we make a shoe just for these girls? Beautiful glove leather so it fits so comfortably. Nice cushion sole. Fantastic. Off we went up to Paul Fireman in Boston. Paul, just got this new idea. It's great stuff. These girls they're exercising and it's a fantastic idea. Why don't we make them a shoe? And Paul said, no. Look, we have a great business, Arnold. We're doing well. Our running business. We're only 2 years into it and it's growing. It's great. No, forget it. No, Arnold didn't forget it. Arnold went round to the back door.
Yeah.
And he knocked there, talked to the production people. So the production people said, what do you want? I said, look, make me 200 pairs of shoes, just with a nice glove-like upper and a nice cushion sole. He got his wish. He was, pretty convincing, was Arnold. So he got his 200 pairs of shoes. Back down to LA when he got them and distributed them to the instructors, because this was going quite nicely down there in LA. Instructors and some of the best of the people who were actually participating. And really, that is it. It just exploded. It just grew. The girls loved the shoes so much. And the only one problem with it is that they had made it out of glove leather, and glove leather is like having a piece of paper. You can just tear it. It just no strength at all. And I know when I first heard about this, I was like, oh no, can't do that. And in saying that, we made our World 10, which had won the Boston Marathon. I think it won the Boston Marathon in the late 60s or the early 70s, and that was made out of glove leather. But we reversed it. So we were suede outside. So when we put adhesive on to stick the sole on, we didn't have to do anything. It went in. They were using the leather side, the skin side. And so they had to rough up the skin side in order to get the adhesive to take the sole. And of course, that weakened the leather. When you think glove leather is 1 millimeter thick.
Oh, wow.
There's nothing there. 1 millimeter is nothing. So after about a month or so, these shoes were falling apart. But we were lucky. We were talking about America. We were talking about American women. We were in Los Angeles, and they loved it so much they couldn't care. Now we'll go to buy another pair.
Yeah.
Had that been anywhere else in the world, I think that would have killed us almost. But they loved it. And then you get Jane Fonda, who's doing workout exercises, videos, and she's wearing Reebok. And this happened all around. So all of a sudden, this company, we became a women's company because women just love the shoes. We were known in the running fraternity. We were growing there, but you could have asked 99 people out of 100 in America and just said, have you heard of Reebok? And they said, what? Who? No. But the women took us on. They knew Adidas, they knew Nike, but they knew them as male and sweaty. This was just for women. So the company from $9 million went up to $30 million within the year. Then $90 million, $300 million, then $900 million. So we were nearly $1 billion in about 4 years. The fastest growing company.
And what year was it that started when you had did the aerobics shoes?
Well, we started in about 82. We've been doing 2 years of running, so 82 the aerobics started.
Oh wow!
Just went wild, and we became.
So it took,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so it took that long of you sticking with it before that explosion happened, right? So it's like, I mean, such a long period of time that not a lot was happening, and then all of a sudden, when everything aligns. But I think that goes back to what you're saying about just having to stick with something for long enough until you get those right turn of events that occur, and then it can take off.
Absolutely, and it did. So that was in the 70s. Running was taken off, so we were very lucky to be there at that time. And a lot of companies in the UK tried to come in on the running market, but they were not perceived as athletics people. They were shoemakers, and shoemakers making running shoes didn't work. But we were always perceived as an athletics company, and
Right.
that was it. So when this happened, it was incredible. And yes, the growth was absolutely incredible. And it was, well, by the time I left the company at the end of 1989, and by that time we were just short of 4 billion on revenues. And for me, I had put on distribution all the way around the world. I'd put about 30 different countries, built the distribution. So I was on an airplane, 35,000 feet, almost every week, going wherever. I would be picked up by a limousine. We'd go to the best hotels, and then we'd dine at some of the best restaurants, and we'd just discuss a bit of company business, I suppose, but really not part of the growth, because by that time, the company is full of lawyers, it's full of accountants, and it's full of a lot of people who are selling. I was selling shoes; they're selling boxes.
Yeah.
They're selling boxes of shoes, and you're talking about 3 million pairs a month at that point. You're really growing. We grew to about 5 million pairs a month. So it was time for me. The challenge had been then. The challenge had been that 30 years of really trying to get to doing it, succeeding, and enjoying that ride. And yes, at the end of 89, when I left, well, just before then, we'd overtaken Adidas, we'd overtaken Nike, and Reebok was the #1 global sports company.
Wow. Now, one of the most shocking things, at least for me in the book, which is when you sold the brand. I mean, initially you had sold the branding rights, right, to the US distributor, but then you gave them everything, the entire brand, to them in order to make it so that the company could continue to grow. That was just a shocker to me. I didn't expect to read that. What do you have any, like, I guess, I mean, well, I got two questions about it, but I guess first, do you have any regrets about doing that? I mean, obviously you didn't know what was going to happen, but it almost seems like it was necessary, because if you didn't have the financing, like you said, then there was no way that it didn't matter if you had the best, 5-star shoes. But do you have regrets about that, or did you have regrets about it? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't have regrets about that. And it is one of the questions. Most asked questions is that.
Yeah.
Well, the reason is that we needed that. We needed money. The company needed that support. As far as I was concerned, this was not about Joe Foster. This was about Reebok. We had an opportunity here. If we could get the money and we get the backing, it's more like, you get to the point where there was a point where there was at 20 million. When the debt gets to 20 million, does somebody who's putting the money in pull out because they can't see where it's going, or do you give the incentive to keep it going? Just keep it going. It's like you've got to do something. And so to me, it's like, what are we aiming for? We're out of the UK. We could build a company a certain size. If we're going to be a global company, it needs other people, and they have to have the incentive. They have to feel that it's worth their efforts. No matter what my efforts were. But we became #1. How can I regret that?
Yeah, no, true.
Because you become #1, you can't regret that. Yes, I could have made different decisions, but would we have become #1? Would it have worked that way? As it happens, whatever I did, we became #1. And to me, that was the aim. That was the target.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing to make that decision. That's just incredible. Did you have some kind of other deals set up? I mean, I know you became the international distributor, but did you have some kind of royalty agreement or something that would guarantee that you had the success with Reebok?
Well, we were not that big at that time that you could make those deals, but I did have a verbal agreement with Paul.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that worked out quite nicely.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's just amazing. I don't think too many people would have made that choice. You know, I hear all the time. I work with entrepreneurs, and partnerships fall apart over much lesser things. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so to be willing to give up that much to see the company succeed, I think that's just amazing. I don't think there's very many people that would do that.
But you know, I mean, for me, you can be a, you know, if you're just going to be a small company,
Yeah.
you you end up as a small company, and you know, the vision was this is growing and it's growing fast, but when it grows that fast, it needs fuel. It needs a lot of money to make it grow. And I was still part of the company. I mean, I'm still part of the company now,
Yeah.
even though I left way back there at the end of 1989. But for me, it has been a bit like the Eagles and Hotel California. You know, you can check out, but you can never leave.
Right.
And they've always brought me back. Everybody wants to say, Joe, what happened? Joe, what's this? And it's one of the reasons for writing the book, because
Yeah.
there's been so many stories about Reebok, you know, where it came from, what it was. Well, it has 125 years of family history.
Yeah.
And it has so much credibility in there. And you know, people have come, people have gone. Paul Fireman is no longer there. You know, we now have a situation where Adidas are selling the company. And so this is a new beginning. There's new opportunities. And people want to talk to me. And people are talking to me, even people who want to buy it are talking to me. You know, it's always amazing. But yes, that takes my life along with Reebok, and I'm still with Reebok. And you know, so for me, it has worked perfectly fine. You know, if
Yeah.
I'd have made a lot of money and maybe not here, I may be somewhere, you know, not even interested. But no, this is good.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that attitude very much. It's really interesting too. I think just because I had read what's it, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, Shoe Dog, and you know
Oh,
Nike's story, and then to hear your story, and just it's like you know hearing both the things that are happening, and I was trying to piece together the timelines with Runner's World and everything, and it's just really interesting to see that in you know both being stories of perseverance. You know, I guess one thing that I would love to get your take on and your advice. Again, I coach a lot of entrepreneurs. You know, I'm an entrepreneur myself. What would you recommend for guys? I think most of the time people get discouraged, right? And I know, like, you know, listening to reading your story, there's a lot of points where you could have just quit and and been discouraged because there's a lot of setbacks, a lot of bad things that happen. What kind of advice do you give for entrepreneurs starting out, maybe young guys or young girls that are starting out and wanting to, you know, build a company, build something successful? What do they need to do? What advice would you give them?
yeah. Well, the first thing you've touched on is really important. The young guys. You
Mm.
have to be young. When Jeff and myself, we left the company, I was 23, left for Foster's, a family company. I was 23 and Jeff was 25. We were young.
Yeah.
We were indestructible. And we couldn't listen to anybody saying you can't. Oh, no, we can. Doesn't matter. We can. We can do it. So I think the most important thing is to believe in yourself. Just believe in yourself, and that if you've got
Yeah.
an idea, you know, okay, we're not saying that every idea turns out to be a multi-billion business at the end of the day, but there'll be
Right.
no satisfaction. There'll be absolutely no satisfaction if you don't do it, if you don't give it that chance. You've got to, if you've got a thought, go. And today, with the technology we have today, and I see there's some incredible opportunities today. Right when I started the company, we didn't have mobile telephones. In fact, we could hardly actually pick up a telephone because you had to be in a hotel before you could make a call to anybody. So you know, the best thing I had, I think, was a calculator. That was about it. Otherwise, I was jumping on a plane with a handful of American Express traveler's checks, and
Yeah.
I would go to meet people. You had to make decisions. I mean, today, yes, be young. Don't try and make your decisions when you're in your 40s to be an entrepreneur. you're a bit late by then because you've got problems. You may have a family. You may have the second thoughts. I mean, too many people are talking to you. I think you've just got to be. You've got to be at a point because nobody can tell you you're going to be a successful entrepreneur. Nobody can tell you that. You have to believe that.
Yeah.
You have to, and you don't even have the belief you're going to be an entrepreneur. You've just got a mission, and you know the word entrepreneur comes out of that at some point because you actually succeeded. But you know if you don't take that first step, and that first step is I want to do this, and just go do it. So my advice to anybody is give it a try, whatever it is. There are many other things as you grow, and you need people, and the best people that you can get are the people that want to work with you. As against sort of going out there finding people. People want to work with you. And then you've got to make them feel part of the company. You've got to build that culture. There's got to be a winning culture. So this is what you grow into. And if you have a winning culture, and you need integrity, those are sort of things as you grow. But when you say starting out, there's nobody with you. More than not, there's nobody with you. You've got to put your foot forward. Quite a few people look at you and think, what? You're doing that? Why? Why didn't you just get a job? You know, it's so it's a decision that you take.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting. I think that the trade-off. I mean, one of the things that was clear in the book that you made clear as well. By the way, guys, if you haven't picked up a copy of the book, I've got a link down below. Make sure you grab a copy of Shoemaker. Really good read. You're gonna love it. Great story. Like I said, it should be a movie. But yeah, one thing that was really clear was the amount of sacrifice you made. So much, I think so many people today are focused on profits and making money. Well, that's great in business. It seems like your focus was on just success, on making the company bigger, not on how much money it was going to bring you, because you made so many personal sacrifices and even family sacrifices. I think multiple times in the book you mentioned how, you know, that you had to pay the sacrifice of not being able to be there a lot of times for the family, that you had to be flying and doing all these business deals, and that was, you know, a sacrifice. What are your thoughts on that and making that sacrifice? I think some people want to have their cake and eat it too, and you know, what's your thoughts on that? And even I think a lot of times we hear entrepreneurs and they say, successful entrepreneurs, you ask them, you say, hey, you know, what was the one thing that you would change or that you tell your younger self? And they say, well, I would have spent more time, not so much time working, and I would spend more time, you know, with family and friends, and not so working so hard in the business. I'm not so sure about that advice when people give that. What's your take on all of that and the sacrifice that's required to become successful?
Well, I mean, in the story, we had to change the name of the company. We started off in America, and the story's in there. We ended up with Reebok. And we had to, when I went to the agent that was working with us to get this name, and I said, we had to give him a few names because it wasn't just so simple. But I said, we put this in there. I said, look, we need this one. We've got to be in love with it. This has to be our passion. So in answering your question, it is your passion. It's your love. That is it. You're in love with it. You can't leave it. You've got to go with it. And when you start thinking about family, I think it's a lot to do with that family, if they're with you. You can't get off the treadmill. You have to keep going. It's so necessary to keep going. As we mentioned before, 1968, 1979, 11 years of keep trying. And yes, my wife quite often said, look, what are you doing? Why don't you give it up and get a job? Yeah. It's like, that's almost a knife being stuck in you. It's like, no, just join me. And I've had so many opportunities to travel with me, and she could have done, but okay, you have a family, and that sort of stops a lot. But I think it's attitude as well. You know, if it is like, come on, you know, yeah, we win it, and well, towards the end, I mean, we were traveling to some really fantastic place. And then my wife would come with me. She did a global trip with me, and we met a lot of people. We were going to Monte Carlo to the meeting a lot of Hollywood people. In fact, she had a photograph taken between Roger Moore and Sean Connery.
Uh-huh.
They were both James Bond. Now, you know, what woman wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, where's the trade-off? There isn't. It is like you're either together or something will slip. And you need that. I mean, right now, Julie and I, my second wife, you know, we go everywhere. And if anybody wants me to go somewhere, it's 2 tickets. Yeah. The 2 of us go. Because, you know, we join in what is happening with the brand and where we go. So I think when it comes to family, you know, I think if family put pressure on you that you're doing too much, you're working too hard. Maybe if you're working for the government, maybe if you're sitting at a desk and whatever it is, and you know, maybe you're working too hard if you ignore it. But I think if you're an entrepreneur, I think it gives you the excuse to say, look, understand what we're doing, and we should be coming together and doing it together. And there won't always be good times. We'll have some pretty difficult times. But again, if you do keep going, which you should, you go through these things. In the book, we have problems. And some of those problems, like you say, you could just turn around and say, oh, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But you know, at the back of it, you've always got, no, you know, we're winning. We're a winning company. And I think you've got to believe that. Because if you don't believe it, nobody else will. You've got to believe that you can do it. And you've got to take your family with you. They don't always want to go. That's their problem. That's their right.
Right.
They don't always want to go. That's their right. But I think an entrepreneur is very, very involved in the company. And very much you have to accept the fact that that's going to be the focus of attention. And if you don't focus and you don't give it attention, it will fail.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Absolutely. That's yeah, it's a sacrifice, right? I think that that's the thing, is like you said, as an entrepreneur, you're always going to have that sacrifice, not as maybe a regular desk job. You could be working too much, but yeah, so I think that's important for guys, you know, in choosing who they have around them, who their friends, who their family, you know, who they end up in relationship with, right? Is because the business is always going to come first.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah. So, what's your mission now? What do you know? You've written the book. What's kind of your big plans? What do you want to do, and what do you want to accomplish with this book?
Well, I have the attitude that there's no point in writing the book unless you can sell it, and unless people read it.
Right.
Right now, the mission is to become a bestseller.
Good.
I think Shoe Dog became a bestseller, but Nike are a lot better known at the moment than Reebok. Reebok used to, I think Reebok at one point, we had 60% bought of the American population had a pair of Reebok. Yeah, at one time, people stopped calling them sneakers and they called them the Reeboks. Get your Reeboks. It took over from being sneakers, but it's gone down a bit. Adidas bought the company, and they bought it because they wanted to improve Adidas. They wanted to give Adidas more momentum. So what they did, you can't blame them for that. They gave Adidas more momentum, and it's fine. But you know, Reebok stagnated. They changed the lettering on the name, and they went to a delta instead of the vector. So they changed the image. And when you do that, you dilute everything. People lose sight. You know, people aren't thinking of Reebok every day, as I may, or a lot of people are working for Reebok may. People see Reebok and it's an image. It's like when you see Ford, you see the lettering, Ford. And so Adidas, they changed these images, they changed things around. Over the last 2 years, though, they've just come back, and now they have, as on the book, we've got back to the vector, and they brought the lettering back in now, which is the Mototech Tourer with the dropped R. And so now we're back to that image, that single image. So, yep, that is helping. That is helping to build should help to build the brand back again. But you know, if my book being a #1 or at least a bestseller in America, and that's you know, I've gone through that before. How do you get the shoe into America? How do you get the book into there to be number
Right.
one? So that's the mission. That's what I concentrated on now. Number one book.
Okay, yeah, no, I like that. And like I said, guys, I have the book right here. Very good book, and I've got the link down below in the description. So take a moment now and just go ahead and click that and buy that book if you haven't, and you're really gonna enjoy it. So okay, so I'm trying to think what else. I had a couple other questions here, but um, I mean, well, okay, what do you think if there was one moment that you were going to give up? What was that moment? What was the closest that you came to just tossing in the towel?
I don't know. Again, I've been asked that question a few times, and
Yeah,
I try to find an answer for myself, because I don't think somewhere in either my DNA or whatever it is, it was don't give up.
yeah,
There's whilst there's still room to put another foot forward, whilst you can see an entree, and I think it's we had so many problems, as you do. This is life. You get problems, and it was finding an answer. I think if I'd have not been able to find an answer, I think then somebody would have had to push me. No,
yeah,
there's nothing. You can't do it. It would have had to be a full stop. Whilst I was always able to find an answer, then you keep going, and and that has been the mission. The mission was, well, why should we not do it this way? We can go around it if we can go through it, and so I can't say that I ever faced that problem where, no, let's give up. No, it's and my brother was always there. He just loved working in the factory. He just loved running that factory. That was his life.
yeah,
Everything else he gave to me, the marketing, the sales, and whatever. You do that job, the travel. He didn't want to do that. The unfortunate thing is he died just as we got to America. He was an athlete himself, and he must have overdone things, and he got cancer and he died just as we got Paul Fireman. He never saw the real success. And I guess rather than we sort of say, this is an end, I think that probably gave me more of a spur, more of a, well, I've got to do it now. Yeah, I must do it now. And I mean, he would have been delighted at where we ended, or we didn't end, how far we got.
yeah.
And, I mean, and then again, that may have been a different change. Instead of me doing things that I did, I may have changed my decisions had Jeff still been there. Many things could have changed your decisions, but no, I had to take other people.
Now, one of the things I struggle with probably the most is focus. And you had so many roles that you had to do in the company. I remember reading about you getting the letters from Shoe about the distribution and not even having time to reply to them. And then, how did you manage to do all those things, or how did focus play a role in your success? Did you have to delegate a lot? How did you solve that problem of having that split focus?
Well, I think when it comes to some of the decision making, and with Shoe, these were decisions you had to make those decisions. Okay, if you've got a good assistant, somebody who's helping you, somebody who in those days can do the typing, because now we can all type.
Right.
In those days, you had to have a typewriter, and so if you had a good secretary, a good person, you could say, look, it's this, 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 and this. They would take shorthand, and then they would do. So you could only need to spend a few minutes on something. A decision's a decision. How broad or how long, how much you want to spend on it is up to you. And I think when it comes to using your time, I think if things come at you, you've got to handle those things as they come at you. You can't just leave them on the in tray. That doesn't always work. With America, it was, let's say, in those days, we only corresponded. Well, on the odd occasion, we managed telephone calls, but mainly it was by letter.
Wow.
So putting letters out there, get rid of that. Oh, I've lost them again. Now what have I done? Something came down here.
Oh,
Yeah, Adobe Flash came. Just get rid of Adobe Flash.
I don't know where you are. I don't know what you've done.
Hit the top and see if we get rid of that.
You're still on this stream.
I'm on. I just can't find you on
it's just that,
the screen.
The screen took over for a moment, and we're just trying to get Adobe decided it would wants me to do something.
No.
This is Adobe there.
No, but you don't want that one.
Oh, you want to get rid of it?
No, I don't know where you've gone. I don't know where the page is. It's on Chrome, and I don't use Chrome.
Oh.
If you can still hear, Joe, is that okay?
You're underneath there, right?
Yeah, I can still hear.
Hit red.
No, because that's an email underneath. No, cut him off.
You sure?
No, hang on. There we go. I think we're there. There we go. There you go. Sorry about that.
Thank you, guys. These things have a life of their own, don't they, sometimes?
Yeah.
And certainly now the technology, I have to, Julie is my technician. So everything went, in fact, it came up right in the middle of the screen there. Adobe wanted to do something. Oh, where were we? I'm sorry now. It totally went away.
Oh, we're talking about the focus, and I was asking about how you maintain like doing all these things and were able to focus.
Well, I'm sure that if I got too many things, I'd probably have to pick the most important and go with that. And usually I manage to be in front of the game and pushing the questions rather than them to answer them. And again, we talk about people, and if you've got good people, if you have, in my days there were secretaries, I think now they're personal assistants or whatever, but if you have a good assistant, that assistant knows what is going on, and you only need to have a few words to say, handle it in this way. So a good team behind you is always the best way.
Yeah, that makes it. That's what I need to do, is get a good assistant. That would help me quite a bit, I think.
It's never that easy, though, is it?
No. So I suppose we should start wrapping things up here. Again, guys, check out the book Shoemaker. Like I said, really good book. Highly recommend it. Can't wait for the movie.
Oh, good.
Could be really good. But I appreciate you coming on here, Joe. I mean, it's an honor to have you on the channel and to share your story and just just your attitude is just a wonderful attitude. I love it. I think that a lot of people can learn from you reading the book and just how you've handled things and from all the setbacks that you've gone through and still persevering through and in being willing to give up the company essentially to make the company thrive. And I think it's just it's a wonderful story. And I appreciate you being on here.
It's been a pleasure, John. It really is. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah. I wish you the best success in the book.
Yeah, we're working on it.
All right.
We are indeed.